like you said, you don't want to move from your father taking decisions to the man in your life taking decisions. And
Yeah.
that's a real thing.
For sure.
Like all of us as women need to decenter ourselves from men.
Hi guys, welcome back to Moment of Silence Pod. I'm Sakshi Shivdasani.
I'm Naina Bhan, and today
I'm Sonia Shenoy.
We are so happy to have you. I'm sure you all know who Sonia is, but she is literally the ultimate finance girly. She has a career which is probably older than some of our audience is like 10 years old. For context, she's not old as you can see, but some of our audience is really young, is what I meant to say. And now she has traveled the world and landed on content. So obviously that is the most lucrative career. How has it been?
It's been amazing. I'm really enjoying it. And I think it's something that I didn't plan, but it just happened by accident. I was in a space where I wasn't growing as much. I was in TV and TV was doing great until it wasn't. And then I decided to make this jump. I had no plan, but things just worked out.
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to say before we get into this episode, this is just for the people sitting behind the camera. Look, we know finance is scary. Sakshi and I have sat and sweat in the green room while Sonia was telling us about even the most mundane things about saving money. We felt like it was a third degree investigation.
Yes.
Okay. And we know that it's scary for you because no one wrote in. Like it was so scary that the women found finance just an untouchable topic. So I invite you to put your fear away. We're going to make it so Morse coded. We're going to make it so wholesome. Just like hang out with us for a bit, and maybe this might better your life because the woman who's achieved ultimate financial independence is sitting with us in the room. She's been through the corporate, hierarchy, structure, dynamics, drama. She's a great content creator, a podcaster, a mother, a wife, just an overall hot Moss
Yeah.
girl. So please, who better to answer those questions than Sonia?
You're so kind, really. I never thought of it that way, but thank you.
Yeah, to start this, so because obviously we have to be the guinea pigs for the Moss
Yeah.
audience, we want to show you some of our dumb purchases,
Okay.
and we want you to tell us
Yeah.
what you think of them, and are they reversible or irreversible?
And should we
honest
stop?
feedback?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Okay. Most of my purchases are emotional. I just want to start by saying, and this reflects how I feel about myself. To give you context, I am a history student. I studied film. I run a podcast about yapping. And then I went to the bookstore and I bought this book. And I came home and I showed it to my boyfriend and he laughed at me. He's like, when the fuck are you ever going to read this book? I thought I was going to be very smart and read Court and Judgments.
I think you would read this.
I'm not reading.
May I see?
I don't think a book is ever a bad purchase.
Even if you don't read it?
You will
Yeah.
read it at some point in your life, I guess. I mean, it'll never go waste.
You can at least judge it by its cover, which is what you have to do with books. I would read this.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's yours for a easy price of $7.99 rupees.
Is that what you bought it for?
Yeah.
So you could resell it? No, make money off it?
I thought I would become smarter. I'm trying to give back to the female community, but unfortunately, apparently you can't absorb
We don't want
information.
what you're giving.
That's mine.
No, I think it's not bad. I
No?
thought it would be worse, your purchases. But this first one is not bad, honestly.
This was to prime you. Sakshi's going
and
to
Arun
take you.
Shori is amazing. So
Yeah? Oh. Guess we'll never find out.
No, we will. One day.
okay.
Okay. My purchase. I don't even have a justification. This is a leash that is the color of my favorite bag. Because my new sick thing is that I need my dog to match me. So every time I'm wearing a colored outfit, I will buy him a matching leash to go with my outfit. But this particular leash I bought in London, I thought for 2,000 rupees. But unfortunately, 200 pounds is 20,000 rupees. And it is Italian leather though. But the kicker is it does not fit my dog.
I have no words. It's good you told me that it's a leash for your dog. Very bad purchase. That's all I can say.
Now that we have the professional opinion in, Sakshi, bad Sakshi. My next purchase is, we're sitting in it right now. It is this studio. We are a monetized podcast, but the co-founders don't draw salaries. We have a 15-person team. We have this 1,100 square foot room that is on our payroll. Good purchase, bad purchase.
It's on rent.
Yes.
Okay. Very good purchase.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Please tell us more. Why is it so good? So I can tell my mom.
So it's obviously something that you're going to monetize over time. So if you amortize it over, like, say, 5 years, if you have this podcast for 5 years, if you spread the purchase over 5 years, and hopefully you will have more views, you will get more, brands on board, you can make up for the cost. So it's like an investment, right? In your business.
Yeah.
That's a great purchase.
Thank you.
Are you on the Nikhil Kamath side of things where you like are a renter, or do you think buying a house is the move?
So, honestly, you know what? For me, I just moved from my father's home to my husband's home. So I never had to take that decision, fortunately or unfortunately. But I feel like people should not buy a house until they turn 40, 45. Because I think living on rent, although we are conditioned to believe that buying a house is something that, it just validates us, is a kind of a synonymous to success when you buy a house. But if you remove all that conditioning, you'll realize that a house is an illiquid asset.
Yeah.
It's in fact not even termed as an asset a lot of times. You can't, if you suddenly need money, you can't just sell your house but you can do that with mutual funds. You can do that with gold. So when you're set with your, all your assets is when you should actually look to buy a home, but then there's also an emotional aspect to it. A lot of people feel when they're getting married, they want to buy a house, and then that's an emotional decision. That's not a financial decision. So you need to know what your goals are. I mean, if you really need a house and you don't want to stay rented, then that's an emotional decision, and you can't look at it in an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
I don't have a home of my own. I never bought my own home. But I was privileged enough to not have to buy my own home. But even if now I have the money, I won't invest in real estate.
No?
After 40, all your assets need to be liquid.
So buying a home that you're not going to stay in is an absolute waste.
It's not a waste. It's just... So it depends, right, what your home is for.
Yeah.
Now, if you're getting married and you want to buy a home as your family home, which is your first home, great, go ahead and do it. But the amount of money that you're actually going to be investing in EMI, in down payment, all of that, if you invest that in the stock markets, you can make a lot more money over a period of 10, 15 years. But then again, a home is an emotional purchase. So it depends.
So we can't buy the $1 million mansion we were looking to buy. Fuck.
But I guess that's where it starts, right? Your first introduction to money is always going to be an emotional one, whether that's conscious or subconscious. I think and even within the same house, two siblings can be raised in very different emotional connections to money. So when I was growing up, I mean, the market was in a shit place, and it still is. So I'm kind of young. What had happened was that my parents, in trying to protect us and have a very positive feeling towards money, never discussed numbers with us. And so the great part of that is that I don't move through life with a fear of money. But the bad part is that I just don't know what to do with money. I'm not very financially literate. I'm constantly depending on other people, and all of my money making decisions feel very fear-based. And I'm very penny wise and pound foolish. Yeah. And my sister is the younger sister who grew up in a time where, like, I think India had just kind of like was reaping the benefits of globalization and things like that. So things kind of moved through her hands a lot faster. Like, she always had the latest BBM or a BlackBerry or Apple, like iPad, this, that, and the other.
I only her sister
They're the
and I
same
have a
age.
5-year age gap, and she's like, the latest BBM, the latest Apple. I don't know why you're aging.
Why do I sound so old?
Your sister's older?
No, they're the
Younger.
same
Yeah.
age.
Oh,
And, yeah.
The Facebook, the Instagram. I don't know why.
Some serious trauma there.
Yeah, I'm realizing as I'm
Sibling trauma.
unpacking this on the sofa. Yeah.
Were you taught about money growing up?
No, not at all.
No?
Not at all. In fact, I feel like a lot of women, right, go through a phase where there's no financial agency at all. When I was growing up, my parents never involved me in any money decisions. They never asked me, of course, what to do with money because they thought I don't know.
Yeah.
But my brother was, and he's 5 years older to me. He was always involved in some way in decision making. I guess that was so. Up until a certain time in my life, I had no clue about money. It's only when I landed up a job at a TV channel and as someone who was reporting on stock markets is when I got that exposure to the stock markets. And then there were like random people would walk around and tell me, oh, अच्छा ये mutual fund में invest करो बहुत अच्छा है, वो mutual fund में invest. So I made some mistakes, but that's how I got exposure.
Yeah.
Until then, nothing.
So there is hope, even if as an adult right now, if I'm listening to you and I don't know anything, there is ways to kind of learn that if I just put my mind to it.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
first hurdle is in your mind it's not about where you invest the money. It's about, can you invest that 1,000 rupees if you're given full agency to do it? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because no one tells you that, okay, invest the money. It's okay if it fails. It's okay if it doesn't come back to me. No one says that.
Yeah.
What is the lowest amount of money? If I'm like 18 to 20 years old watching this podcast and I've got my first salary or pocket money, what's the tiniest amount of money that I can start experimenting with? And how do I do it? Do I do it through an app? Do I do it through a person? What would be my way
Okay,
to go?
so let me give you the numbers. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll give you first a kind of aspirational goal, which is the first 1 crore that everyone looks at. I know it's a very overwhelming number for a lot of people,
Yeah.
but you can hit your 1 crore corpus goal in 10 years if you invest 45,000 rupees per month
Okay.
into any normal index fund. Index fund is just a fund which encapsulates all the companies, the top companies in India, which are in the Nifty index. So your Reliance, Infosys, all of the top companies. It's basically a fund that just mimics the index. So it gives you on an average historically about 12 to 14% returns. But if you invest 45,000 per month, but that's also a lot of money.
Yeah.
So let's bring it down to 35,000 a month. Then you'll have to step it up by 10% every year based on your salary hike or,
Yeah.
If you invest 35,000 rupees per month, stepping that up by 10% every year, you can make it to 1 crore in 10 years. But a lot of people feel like 1 crore is very intimidating and 35,000 is a lot. So you just halve that to 15,000 a month and keep a target of 50 lakhs. So you start slow, but the trick is not the amount of money you invest. The trick is to be consistent, to be disciplined in your investing,
Yeah.
and to not get swayed by market ups and downs. So those are the 3 things which prevent people from making big money in the stock market.
So suppose I have say 15,000 or
Yeah.
25,000 rupees salary per month and I am not paying for rent. I'm staying with my parents. What part of that money and how do I take that money and put it in the market? What would be that first place that I put it and how do I put it there?
So let's work with just 20% of your salary, whatever it is, right? If you have 15,000, 20,000, take 20%. At the start of every month, as soon as your salary comes in, you take that money, if it's 5,000, 6,000, whatever, and put it in a simple index fund. Now you can do this through all apps. There are so many broking apps out there.
Can you name a few?
The
Is that-
Zerodhas, the Grows of the world. I mean, I'm not recommending anything, but you can
There are enough out
there are enough
there.
and more apps
Yeah.
out there, right? Where you can go. Every bank has their own app. You can connect your bank account to an app and you can invest through there. But see, I recommend getting a financial advisor, not at the start. When you're very young, you don't need to, but as you go along, because what you need to do is you need to set your goals first.
Yeah.
So there are SIP calculators online, very easily available, where you put your goal and you work backwards. And then that, for me, it's my child's education. For you, it may be buying a house when you get married or whatever, right? So you put your goals and then you work backwards and then you get a number as to how much you need to invest. And then you start investing in a simple index fund, which is the most basic thing that you can do. But it's not my recommendation because I'm not SEBI registered. You need a SEBI registered financial advisor to help you
Right.
with these things.
I'm a certified financial planner, so
What?
I can be a recommender of things.
Really?
I did all my exams. I didn't get the experience required to kind of be SEBI registered or however that works. But I did finish the exams and then I shifted to modeling. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
But then that's amazing. You should invest your own money.
I should. Basically, in the green room, we were talking, and I was telling Sonia about how actually, as of today, I am a car owner, but I don't know
Yay.
thank you, my loan amount, my how much I've already paid, how much I have to pay, what my EMI is. And my dad really wants me to know these things. And I'm just so like, he'll figure it out. It's not my department. That I'm like letting it be. But now, tomorrow, suppose my dad can't do all of this. I don't want to put that, like, whatever he's doing, I don't want to make another man in my life handle that. If it's not my dad, it has to be me, right? So, but for me, it's so intimidating as a person to, like, I know I've invested in mutual funds. I know I have a amount going every month from my account because I get that auto payment notification. But still, if you ask me which broker I've registered with or like how much I've invested, how much that has come to,
Oh, what does my portfolio mean? I have no idea what it means. I just look at the pie chart and I'm like, acha, nice diversity.
if it's all red, you're like, oh no. If it's all green, you're like, ooh.
Yay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So both of you have very different ways of investing, right? For you, I think your father does a lot of your investing for
Yes,
you, and
all of it.
yours is through a financial advisor.
Yes, mine is through a financial advisor, and I do some because I'm trying to challenge myself. I'm trying to play a little bit, and see what that looks like. But I'm really ashamed of anybody looking at what I'm doing, because I feel like I'm doing it wrong. So I've come with like baseline financial illiteracy. Now I can spell 3-letter words. And my sister's, like, her portfolio doesn't exist. And I want to get hers going, but I'm like, kaun se muh se? Because मुझे खुद नहीं पता मैं क्या कर रही हूँ. I don't want to be responsible for sending her down the wrong path.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think a couple of things, right? One is, like you said, you don't want to move from your father taking decisions to the man in your life taking decisions. And
Yeah.
that's a real thing.
For sure.
Like, all of us as women need to decenter ourselves from men. It's not anti men, but it's more like pro self.
yeah.
Because we are so used to the men in our lives or even the families in our lives taking decisions for us that we don't know how to take decisions anymore. And no one teaches us these things, right, growing up. So I think that is the first step. You can do that by small things like, take some time out every month. This is what I do. Take some time out every month to learn one thing in finance. It can be anything. Learn about your taxes. Learn about, I have invested in so-and-so mutual fund. How is that doing? Everything is available online for
But
free.
it's so boring.
It-
It's like, why can't we make it a little exciting? Can't we turn it into a rap or something at the end of the month?
It's like the dressing your Barbie.
Yeah,
thing.
something. Can't they gamify information for women? So that, like when you split the screen and there's like a cat being fed on the bottom. and
If your
someone-
portfolio is less than the cat dies, and
Yeah,
then
something.
Oh, I never thought of that actually. I mean, it's something people should do. Yeah, it's a good business idea.
it's a good, because you remember that girl math trend, which
Yeah.
was like, if I buy this dress, this is just 7 coffees. So if I just don't buy 7 coffees, the dress pays for itself. I do think that it was like funny, haha, and everything, but it's such a privileged take, right? Because if I'm a single mother who has to handle my kids' finances myself, if I saw that trend and I would see like women, including you and me, glorifying being absolute noobs
Yeah.
or about finance, like, oh haha, this is not a girl's job, my father handles it. I would be like, you're so dumb, like you're genuinely, mother swear, so dumb, you know. So like I feel that frustration with myself, and like my dad has literally told me, he was like, what if I just tomorrow I'm like, I want to rob you, like what if I want to do that?
And that happens, by
And
the
that
way.
happens in families all the time. Now my dad, obviously, like little bit I know the guy, you know, he's been around a while, and I know he's just trying to like instill that, like, you know, you need to like keep your shit on you. And to be fair, he did make me do finance planning so that I have some, like, even as much as I switch off on it, if I do look at the sheets, I know what's happening, you know. Is that literacy is there, the interest is not there. But I think the literacy is actually the problem.
Yeah.
Because ठीक है, I know I have to invest in a mutual fund, I know about SIPs, I know about all of that, but I did a full college degree to know that, even though it should be as simple as cooking.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everyone should have a baseline of like, dal mein kya dalta hai.
Yeah.
Even if you can't make the best dal in the world, you have to have some sort of like base, like, you know, which is similar to the finance part, because money runs.
Which like there are
It's
some
interesting you say that, because, you know, for me, I'm very intimidated in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, I can't cook dal to save my life.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'll never be able to do it as well as someone else. So why try it anyway? I think a lot of women feel that about money, because they feel like anyway their husbands, fathers, brothers have been doing it for years. Now, if I start, I won't be as good as them. So why try anyway? But I think what you need to realize is, in life, at some point, there will come a time when you have to take these decisions on your own.
For sure.
Because I know it's very morbid, but most women outlive their husbands, and, or they stay single, right? So
Yeah.
at some point, you have to learn these decisions. At some point, your parents are not going to be there. At some point, you know, your financial planner may not be
He may
there.
just
so
quit his job.
Yeah, to become a model. It seems.
to become a model.
Yeah. You know, actually, the thing is that one, and I'm so sorry to continue sounding like a dinosaur, but Gen Z spending is off the chains. Like, it is so bad. People are taking EMIs to go on music festival holidays.
Yeah.
I know so many young people who are not earning well, but every day there's an Amazon package coming to the house. Every day, like, quick commerce has made spending habits so bad that you're always thinking, oh, one day when I make more money, I'll save for a rainy day. But right now, let me get my dopamine rush. Can you like shed some light on this, and how do you can you like read the people who are watching this podcast and give them a little dant, little pity, like, what are you doing?
So that's the whole thing about the instant gratification, right? So I think when you invest your money, it's all about delayed gratification. When you invest your money, you're not going to get any returns for at least 7-8 years, right? You have to go through a bear market. And delayed gratification is a behavioral trait. It is something you have to start inculcating in yourself. Everyone wants instant gratification, but everything comes after a long time. Like, you can't just, you know, say, okay, I want to be fit today, and then tomorrow you're like fit. It doesn't work that way. After years of going to the gym is when it starts reflecting.
But
So
I do think it's also, sorry, both of us. Do you think it's also because Gen Z thinks that whatever I do, I'm not going to be able to buy a house or all of this, so let me at least enjoy the instant gratification?
well, yeah, it's possible. But
Yeah.
I think across ages, if you see, even our parents' generation, my parents couldn't afford a house. Eventually, they bought a house, but they couldn't afford it for a large part of their lives. They also spent when they had to spend. They also made those purchases. But I think disciplined investing is when you realize that at the start of the month, whatever happens, 20% has to go into my investment. I'll spend from the rest. From the rest, you want to buy your 500 rupee matcha also, it's fine. As long as your 20% goes into your investing. That's what discipline, and that's what's helped me. So I can say with a fair degree of certainty that but you see, when I was like in my 20s, social media was not such a big thing. You never knew who is going on which holiday. You could never see pictures. So there was no FOMO.
Huh.
Now, of course, life is very, very different. So, but I still say that, there's a certain degree of the behavioral aspect of investing and money that you first need to tweak before deciding whether I should spend or not. It is very internal. Like, I feel beauty tax is a very big thing. Women are made to feel less by industries, and that's why you end up spending so much on maintenance, right?
Yeah.
All of us have done our hair, makeup, clothes. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I do it all the time, but is it internal or is it externally driven? At some point, you need to realize that as well.
So the other way, in a similar vein of looking at it is, hey, the world is going to end. Every country is going to war. Every place is getting destroyed. So should I have my matcha today, or should I live for a world that may never be in existence by the time I'm reaping the benefits of my portfolio?
But see, the world is going to end. That theory has been on for ages, right?
Yeah.
People are still living. The people who are 60 right now and who've never invested, they are living in poverty while the world is ending.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person.
I also feel like today, if I don't have my matcha, I'll be like, sucked, but it's fine. But 60 years from now, if I have to escape in the middle of the night and they need like a certain amount of money, will I be more like, oh fuck?
Why did I have that matcha so many years back?
But what
Matcha is a real problem.
matcha? Really, I don't even have matcha.
Neither do I.
I also feel like with this pink tax situation, right? Again, the biggest people who are being affected by not knowing enough about money are women. This podcast is monetized because brands see that women are buying many different products. And you need to know what you're putting your money on. When we do a breakdown on what is the basic grooming that men and women do per month to survive, women are at
1,000
women are at a 14,000 and men are at a 4,000
per month.
and you need to do that. I mean, Sakshi and I are both believers of the fact that because the system is so rigged, you have to be groomed at all times to give yourself the best shot professionally.
Yeah. No, the society works on making women feel inadequate, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works for years and years. And the only way to, I think, get away from that is to realize that your own conditioning first needs to come to an end, right? We've all grown up seeing our parents or our mothers groom themselves, look after themselves. Like, a lot of people tell you, oh, after you get married, you need to do this and you need to do that in your in-laws' house. And there's so much conditioning around it.
Yeah.
You need to break away from that. And the only person who can do it is you yourself. It's very hard. I must say, it's very hard. Like, a lot of women I know, they don't feel like they're enough. If they go to a party, they need to carry a certain
Bag.
branded handbag, or like they need to make the latest purchase in shoes and all of that. But I feel that it's just filling a lack inside you, and until you don't work on that, it's never going to help. So beauty tax, this pink tax is real. It's a real problem, and I think a lot of young women are victims of that. But you need to unlearn a lot of that, and the only way you can do it is yourself. Interesting part is, the more money you start earning, and I'm sure you guys will also realize this, the lesser you will spend on all these things.
We're
Because-
not there yet.
Yeah.
We have started spending
No.
even more.
But I will say, when I was just starting content, for instance, I would kind of notice that, for some people it was very casual to have like a pair of AirPods and an iPhone and like a pair of like branded sunglasses and branded shoes. I would notice that and be like, oh shit, I'm not wearing branded sunglasses. But now it's like, if I'm walking out of the house and only my like unbranded or like if I'm at Hill Road and I like a piece of jewelry or something, I'm more likely to buy it and not wait to buy it from like some place that everyone's buying it from. Like, I don't know if y'all remember the triangle bikinis.
Yeah.
I only wanted that. Like, it was like literally my dream to buy the triangle bikini for some reason, and like chase a trend. But now if I see a trend and I'm like, what the fuck, I'm not gonna buy it just because it's the trendy thing to have.
That's mimetic desire, right?
Please, you can't drop a complex. That's mimetic desire.
That's mimetic desire. Like,
The world works on mimetic desire. So mimetic desire is basically you eventually only want what the other person has. And that is something, you don't know what you really want. What you're wearing now, the earrings you're wearing. I mean, they're great. I must say, they're amazing.
They were a gift.
But, but it is pretty much what you've seen or heard or what is aspirational. And the world works on mimetic desire. So the only way, I guess, you can cut it is first by being aware of it, right?
Yeah, but do you think women are more likely to give in to their mimetic desires, or are women called out more for making silly purchases compared to men?
I think for women, it is a sense of validation because a lot of women don't earn their own money, right? They
Yeah.
are not financially. The only way they can project that they are successful is by buying branded clothes, branded shoes. If you notice a lot of men who are wealthy, successful, you'll never see what brands they're wearing.
Yeah.
Whatever, quiet luxury, all of that. Because the validation comes from the checks that are getting cut or the money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
Eventually that's what it's for. I mean,
Or conversely, like which is written into many religions as well, that if a man's wealth is seen through his trophy wife who is decked up in gold and
Yeah.
in the best outfits, and even in like the pandemic and stuff, I feel like going to the parlor, spending time with yourself, like going to the gym, doing these things were ways that women could connect with communities outside of their homes, especially the ones who gave up their careers, and then that was just kind of yanked away from them.
yeah. No, but there are two things in
Yeah.
this. One is, of course, if you enjoy, like if you see something and you enjoy wearing it,
Yeah.
you buy it. But if you want to buy something for external validation,
Yeah.
you make that distinction, right? Like, do you want the latest iPhone only so that the opposite person knows you have the latest iPhone
Yeah.
and feels you're successful or you've made money? Or do you want the latest iPhone because it has all the latest apps or whatever
Right.
features, tech features, all of that? So that distinction is very important. And I feel a lot of young people don't have the ability to make that decision just yet.
Fair. And jealousy is such a real feeling,
it is.
right? Especially when you're like, if I'm in college and someone takes out like this clip that they bought, and I take out my Zerodha app, and I'm like, look at my index
Look at my-
fund. It's not gonna hit the
No.
same, but obviously, I think there are some things like, things that are boring inherently, but one must have to do. For example, for a lot of people, like eating vegetables is like optional, but it's actually not. So I feel like that financial discipline, it kind of ties into how you raise your kids, right? Like, no matter what happens, if your kid knows that 20% of their income needs to be spent, and then over and above that is what is available to spend, then I think it's ingrained in them from the get-go. But then to learn that as an adult takes so much unlearning. But after a point, I guess you can't blame your upbringing. But like a 17, 18-year-old, it takes so much
Yeah.
unlearning.
Yeah, it does. And you know the point you made about the clip versus the Zero, the app, it's real.
Yeah.
Because how much ever you invest and how much ever it grows, it's still just a number in your bank, right? No one can see it. Like no
Yeah.
one knows now how much who's invested. But if you have a flat fancy car in your garage, people know that okay, this person has achieved so much in life.
Yeah.
That social validation is a real thing. But then until what point? Like there are people, like you said, not just Gen Z. I mean, there are people across the board taking, credit card debt is the highest in India it's ever been.
Oh, really?
And if you look at the breakup as far as credit card debt is concerned, the largest amount of debt is in personal consumption. It's not for
Business.
home loans or business or whatever. It's for personal consumption. So people across age groups are taking credit card debt to
Yeah.
fulfill their latest iPhone or vacations and all of that. So that's a real problem.
Okay, so when you started your career out and you had finally started making some strides, what are some financial decisions you made out of this social insecurity? Because I know I've made them. Like
Yeah.
when I started making money as a content creator and I saw the creators around me, everyone's like rolling up in a fancy car, they're like taking business class vacations, etc. The first year I made purchases just based on lack because I thought if I had these things, people would accept me. So what would that be for you when you were starting out?
So I remember I bought a house.
Oh,
And it was the worst decision
Okay.
I have ever made
yeah.
because that house never came up.
Oh.
Oh.
And the reason I bought it at that point, this was many years ago, okay? And I just started making money. And at that point, everyone in my office was buying houses. And there was only discussion everywhere that, acha, abhi property prices गिर गया है, अभी लेना चाहिए, लेना चाहिए, लेना चाहिए. I was like, लेना चाहिए. That's mimetic desire, right?
Yeah.
Did I need a house? No. Did I want a house? Probably not. It was just aspirational to buy a house. So I put a down payment and I bought a house. And the builder went to jail. The building never came up. In the surrounding area, all the buildings, the 20,000 buildings came up. Only that
Oh,
building got.
no.
But it was a great lesson for me. Very expensive lesson, I must say.
Yeah.
But great lesson nevertheless. That it was not my desire. It was not my need.
Yeah.
I didn't need a house, but also it was very aspirational for my parents because my parents, like I said, we lived in Dubai, so my parents were like immigrants, living in Dubai, and for them, buying a house in India was like their life goal. So for them, their children buying a house was like they were living their dreams vicariously
Yeah.
through us,
Yeah.
right? So घर लेना चाहिए, घर अभी salary बढ़ा, अभी घर ले लो. So I bought a house that was under development. First thing. Secondly, it was not my choice. It was just out of peer pressure.
Yeah.
I said, what's the worst that can happen? Never came
Happened.
up. Yeah, happened.
And your parents are still disappointed. Okay, let's talk about another expensive lesson, a wedding. A lesson for everyone. One, what are some silly expenses women take on out of FOMO that they can not do in their wedding and put somewhere else more successfully? Two, when I get some money from this wedding, what do I do with it that'll help me out in my life?
Okay, I must tell you guys, my husband is a wedding planner.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So he has seen some of the most
Andha
lavish weddings in the last couple of years. And the kind of money that people spend on weddings is insane. Yeah. I
I'm
get to hear
sure.
like first-hand stories of how much people spend on their weddings, and
Tell
it's
us.
crazy. It's crazy. Like
Give some numbers. Now we're not telling whose wedding it is.
no, like even alcohol expenses and I'll go into crores.
I'm
Just
sure, yeah.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
just a case in point. I think elaborate weddings now, in fact, a lot of weddings are becoming minimalistic also.
Yeah.
Like earlier there would be weddings for like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. So I guess trimming your wedding to maybe 1 or 2 days and reducing that extra cost. That's one thing.
And how much of your income should you spend on weddings? Is it like just if someone comes to you and says, I want to plan for this wedding, I don't have the money, I want to take a loan out, what are you going to tell them? Is that something we should get into just to like show people that, oh, look at us, status, marriage?
No, not at all. No taking loans for weddings. Not at all. See, I'll tell you, there's a couple of things here, right? I mean, it depends now. Wedding is a very emotional topic once again for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of parents spend on children's weddings because they feel like they've earned all their life, so they need to spend it somewhere. Depends on your socio-economic strata also. What part? Some people are really privileged to spend that kind of money, and so be it. But for people who are not, I don't think you should take a wedding is just like any other purchase to show people, to get that social validation is what I feel. So if you want to do a wedding in a certain way with certain expenses, it's fine. But to go completely elaborate, if you don't have the means, I think is completely avoidable.
So looking back at your wedding, what were some things that you feel like I could have saved on, I shouldn't have done, or this was a great idea?
A few things that I really could have not done. One is buy expensive outfits. I've never used those outfits again. Never. Except for my wedding sari, which I must have used couple of times later. But those Sangeet outfits, those lehengas, I've never used again. Maybe once or twice in the last 10, 15 years. So that cut, full cut.
Yeah.
Then also like having such an elaborate wedding. It was a 3-day wedding. It was not required really. Cut to 1.5 days max. Spent more maybe on the honeymoon. Used that money and spent on the honeymoon.
Yeah.
Basic things like that.
I have a cousin getting married this year, and she wants to pay for it herself with her partner. But she's also she lives in the US, so she has this idea of the big fat Indian wedding, which is like shown online. And then she came to Bombay to do like a wedding recce, and she was like, okay, she knew what outfits cost, but then she was like, I need this photographer, I need this person, and then just stacking up these small you would assume costs, her budget had to go up to like I think she started with like, I want to do a wedding in 20-30 lakhs. And just based on just whatever like basic, she was like, I won't do something too fancy, just intimate. By the time they like racked up everything, it was 70 lakh rupees. And she still claims that this is like the basic of the basic that she wanted. The choreographer that she's been seeing online is really expensive.
Yeah.
And somewhere I'm like, okay, India is a big market for weddings. People are spending on these weddings. So might as well, if I was a vendor for the wedding, I would monetize off of that for sure. But then again, it's the FOMO, right? Like if yesterday I went for a wedding where everything was amazing, I can't provide something lesser than. And
Correct.
because our parents accumulate, like we're such a, my dad has so many friends that would like put themselves out on the line for him. How can he say, by the way, my daughter's decided to have an intimate wedding without you? Like, how is he supposed to say that? And then if I want to pay for it myself, obviously I have to scale back a lot, right? So it's a tricky situation where it's like, okay, I understand that I don't want to pay for it, but I want a small fancy wedding. And my dad is like, but what about my friend that I met once in 1978? How can I
Ignore him and
disrespect him so badly?
So you can do one function in Bombay with everyone, and then you do an intimate wedding in at a destination of your choice.
And your outfits can be made by Nazir Taylor.
But now there are a lot of expenses that were not there earlier, right? Like for example, I just heard of a wedding that took a photographer, a videographer, and a social media
Yeah.
photographer and videographer. So there was like a complete social media team apart from a regular photographer and videographer.
Yes.
So that's double the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, suppose I am a bride who has the aspiration, I've put the money together to buy a 10 lakh rupee Sabyasachi lehenga. And I could do something with that money in terms of investing into a portfolio. What could I do that would be responsible with 10 lakh rupees that would help me out in my married life?
If you had a chunk of money, then obviously investing it into the market into the stock markets is the right thing to do. But if you have an aspiration to wear a Sabyasachi lehenga because you're only going to get married once, assuming, then you should even fulfill that. I'm not saying it's a wrong thing. I'm just saying that if it is to validate, if it's to fulfill a lack in you, then that's what you need to understand. But if it's to just wear it for the fun of it and to enjoy it, you must. Why not? I would rather invest that money in the stock markets because, you know, like I said, right, if you invest like 45,000 rupees per month, you will be at 1 crore in 10 years. So, and the money just compounding, the power of compounding is real. Every 7 years, your money doubles. And then your money works for itself. You sleep and your money is working for you. And one fine day, you are 40 years old and you are financially independent. You can buy 10 Sabyasachi lehengas and wear them every day to every party.
So true. No, because we also realized, right? Like, whenever we talk about financial safety on this podcast and how women need to be financially independent, we get a lot of pushback from the same women we're talking to, being like, no, everything is not about money. But for women, access to money is just access to safety. It's access to being able to take like safe public transport, safe housing, better healthcare, because women now anyway have like PCOS and 100 other things that are going on. So it is extremely important, even if you're married, even if your husband is taking care of your finances, to have something kept to yourselves in a marriage.
Yes, it is. And also, I feel money means freedom, right?
Yeah.
It's the freedom to take decisions that you otherwise can't take. Like a lot of women end up in toxic marriages. A lot of women end up, wanting to leave marriages with children, but they can't because they can't provide for their children. So when you have money, it actually gives you the tool to take these decisions without having to consult anyone or without having to think about anything.
Yeah.
Today, if I can just get up, go for a trip without having to worry about anybody's approval or disapproval on it. And that is true freedom. And that actually, strengthens your relationship, because what it does is then it gets you out of this constant expectation, disappointment loop that a lot of male-female relationships or husband-wife relationships have. Because one is traditionally supposed to be the provider and the other one is traditionally supposed to be the nurturer. So then there's so many expectation disappointments that it creates a lot of resentment. But if there is a parallel track going where both are earning, both are providing, both are nurturing, then and fulfilling their goals, it actually strengthens the relationship.
But at what point, actually, if you should ever merge finances, because obviously we can't have a splitwise account, right? Like when you have a kid, like so. But at what point is it like, okay, this is the time to merge finances, but also all my salary cannot be going in this joint account.
So I'll tell you from my perspective, and I may be wrong here. So we have a common account only for the child's expenses, school fees, tuition fees, classes, all of that. Otherwise, everything is separate.
Okay.
Now, there are reasons for that. One is because everyone's money patterns are different. If you have a coffee every day, it may trigger me because I may feel like it's such an unnecessary expense.
Yeah.
But for you, it serves you, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you need to just go about having a good day. Like if I play tennis and I want to spend 2,000 rupees per tennis class, that's for I feel like that's a better expense than eventually paying for my medicines and not being healthy. But my husband may not feel like, he may feel it's such a wasteful expense. Why do you need it? So we have separate accounts, separate spending patterns, and the joint only when we do like trips or when we have our children's expenses, all of that, it's a joint.
But what
project.
about like groceries, rent, all of these expenses? Do you think that then, like, or say I'm earning X and my partner's earning 3X, then do I just not do the things that I can't afford to do because that becomes a tricky situation? Like, is my husband not supposed to pay for business class for me if he's flying business class with my child? Because I can't afford it.
So in that, I think equality plays a very big role, irrespective of who's earning what. The perks have to be equal, because if you are earning X and he's earning 3X, you're also doing 3X the work at home, right?
Yeah.
Women lift a lot of the
Right.
physical and emotional labor at home, whether it's looking after the house, whether it's looking after the elders in the house or the children in the house or the pet or whatever. Their career trajectory is very different, and you all will of course realize it in due time if you all ever choose to have kids and all that. Women actually have to take a step back physically, emotionally, to be
Especially
there
in
at
a
home.
corporate environment.
Especially, so when you take that step back, you have career breaks, you will automatically be behind a man.
The glass ceiling kind of comes into play.
Yeah, and even if you look at women, there's a gender pay gap, right? In India also, like for every 100 rupees that a man earns, a woman earns 40 rupees. It is a documented gender pay gap, and of course there are reasons for that, because women drop out of the workforce. Women take maternity breaks. They don't come back to their careers. So that's why they are not as retirement ready as men.
Okay.
So that's why I feel like in a marriage, any given point in time, no one's going to earn the same amount. But there has to be an equality that if I get to spend on a 500 rupee matcha, so should you. Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of women today are so afraid of being called gold diggers just because, the online thing of like, oh, if I paid for her dinner, she's a gold digger. So I think then women end up being in like we can't take this money from a man, even if that's your husband, even if that's something. And I think that goes into like a little bit of a toxic independence type of thing. So it's quite nice to hear you like talk about the pay gap, or like women putting a lot of the house labor on themselves, because that is all like invisible unpaid labor.
It is. And if you look at the statistics, about 75% of women have bank accounts, but less than 20% of women have life insurance or health insurance. So you're not even medically ready with health insurance compared to a man.
Yeah.
So these are the gaps that exist. This is the gender inequality that exists. So, even I feel like even in a relationship, in a marriage, that has to be taken into account for.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? Because okay, one thing is on paper, that you can put the money figures down, but there's so much emotion, ego, pride, especially if you're a career woman. There's so much pride and tied to your self identity that when you have to take a step back, I would imagine there's a lot to overcome in your mind to be able to do that and be like, yeah, I'm still the same person without that job. I'm still the same person if I've slowed down in my life and if I'm not making the same numbers that I'm making.
I think it's about marrying the right person
Picking
also.
the right partner.
Finding the partner who empowers you to think a certain way.
Can we please talk about how bad demonetization was for non-earning women who had parked money from ration for years and years, and then they had to take it out from the back of their cupboards and give it, or risk like literally wasting that money, and then they never got it back.
Yeah, that's true.
It was so sad. I had saved 13,500 rupees for an Avicii concert.
This is personal.
This is personal.
Tell me you went for that concert somehow.
So basically, I was lucky that my mom was like, you've saved this. It's not so. I'll give it to you in new notes. But a lot of housewives, men use it as a way to control them, right? So when they had saved this from years and years of just like, oh, groceries cost like 20
Yeah.
rupees less, and they had saved up quite a corpus, but I don't think anyone returned that money to them because they were like, this is not your money to keep. And I think it really messes with
yeah.
you when you have saved up a lump sum.
much,
You're
yeah.
not allowed to invest it anyway because no one knows you have it. So that's your secret stash. And
And
then
then it's gone suddenly.
it's gone, and I'm sure they were berated for hiding that money as well. We did ask our listeners, do you know someone who stayed because they couldn't afford to leave? And many people said their mom, or they see mothers in general, or all mothers in my mom's generation. This is such a privileged example of the same thing, but you know how a lot of old people develop a habit of playing cards in the evening. I have this aunt in my family who was like, I have been losing for a while because I know that I only get like, say, 200 rupees or something to play with. When my husband, if he's losing, he'll just top it up on him, like for himself. But for me, I can't even enjoy this activity because I know I don't have the like extra chutta paisa to back this activity. So she started taking rickshaws instead of Ola, Ubers, and it's so. Like, I understand this is not like a very sad thing because it's a hobby, but just like, not having like that access to like.
But it's a good analogy for how a lot of women have scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that's because of conditioning. Like, you're just not allowed to fail. You're just not allowed to lose money. And that scarcity, that lack is what you just try to squirrel away money from here, squirrel away money from there. You can't just go out and just spend without having repercussions. And that's also, and I feel a lot of men don't have that because they are allowed to take those decisions, fail, and then bounce back faster.
You're saying that's irresponsible if you do something wrong with the
Correct.
money, whereas like if a guy is spending and they make a mistake, it's a valiant effort at
Yeah.
risk taking in the market or whatever.
But it honestly has nothing to do with men as much as it has to do with women's own mindset because of lack of empowerment in that sense. So women also need to understand that you need to decenter yourself from the men in your life in a positive way, where we are so used to being dependent on our
Yeah.
fathers, our brothers, our husbands. So eventually the disappointment comes to hit us. But if you decenter yourself and you start taking those decisions, failing at them, but taking those decisions again, like I bought a house that never came up, and that was a big failure on my part, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I just moved on, I bounced back because, and obviously I've never bought a house since then, but I've burned my fingers really bad. But I feel like I take decisions, I fail at them, and it's okay. But no one tells women that it's okay to make those bad decisions, right?
You're right about it being ourselves because everyone fucks up, everyone makes mistakes. But the way we like admonish ourselves for making that same mistake is, and I think that audacity literally comes from how you were raised, right?
How you were raised. It's
Yeah.
all the 8-year-old you who's, living. Even right now,
Yeah.
all the decisions you take are pretty much the 8-year-old and 10-year-old you who was taught a certain way.
The other way my trauma manifests is that I feel like if I have been given the opportunity to pursue my passion and my career, then I need to be number one at it. I need to be very obviously successful at it. My physical health, emotional health, mental health is replaceable and replenishable, but I can't back down. And I feel like we were talking about this offline in the green room as well. You were talking about when you were working in live television, what a toll that was taking on your body, and you were in the studio at 5:30. Can you paint us through what that was like?
So, I loved my job. I was a TV anchor for the longest time, for like 15, 16 years, reporting live TV, live stock markets every day in the studio by 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. every morning. Eventually, there came a point where I was doing really well at my job, making really good money and, at the top of my game. But there came a point where it was not serving me emotionally and physically. My health was going for a toss, but I had so much money trauma. I was like, why and how can I justify giving up this job and, putting myself first? But then I realized that it's such a paradox. Actually, if I kept going with that, I wouldn't be able to do both. At some point, both my health would collapse and then I wouldn't be able to do justice to my job. So I had to pick one, and it was a very big learning journey for me, learning curve for me, where I had to choose myself. There was no reason to leave, honestly, except that at beyond a point there was no growth, etc., which is normal. But just the fact that, oh, you're earning such a good salary, you're getting to do what you love, why are you leaving it? So I had put a ceiling for myself. I just had to break that barrier. There was no one else stopping me except myself. So I had to kind of move forward from my own barriers that I had put.
Yeah, because when you as a woman are entering a workplace and you're entering high level, high skill job profiles, you have carved your seat out at the table.
Yeah.
So inevitably you are advocating or paving the way for another woman to do it.
Correct.
And then to reverse that feels like you have sent like feminism 3 steps back. You're like, oh, actually I've decided I'm going to quit my corporate job for a softer life, and it feels like the biggest abandoning.
Correct.
Yeah, what's the question?
The question was, no, there's no question. I was just thinking, no, because I'm just having.
Did you do that as well?
No, I'm at that vantage point very often where I know there's going to be a sacrifice at one point. Either it's going to be me as a person living and breathing, or it's going to be my career. And I just can't make the decision between the two.
But you can strike a balance, right? You can find out what's good for you and do both.
Like I to this day, I don't think in the last 3 weeks I've drank one full bottle of water, a day. So I'm like, if that's the sacrifice of my job, then I can't not make my child drink one bottle of water in a week, That's going to be really awful. It's okay till I'm abusing myself, but that's like serious. I can go to jail and
But
stuff.
I feel like once you get pregnant, you'd have to drink water.
What about when I'm not pregnant?
It'll course correct itself.
Yeah.
Is what she's saying.
It only takes 21 days to build a habit, and you're pregnant for more weeks than that.
But why are you not drinking water is the question.
Oh, why
Yeah.
am I not drinking water? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know.
It's our podcast. We will be asking the question.
Why, Naina? Why? What's going on?
Because I think that I am replenishable. I think I'm a renewable resource. And slowly as I hit each decade, I'm like, no, actually you're like coal, babe. It's definitely, there's some
Replaceable.
time. Yeah. Tera time nikal raha hai.
I was reading this book about it was based during the partition. It's called Independence, and one of the women in the book wanted to go to the US to study medicine, and it was from the same college that Anandi Bai, the first woman doctor in India, went to. And they said, listen, we're giving you this seat, but just remember, the main reason we don't give Indian women this seat is because y'all are too entwined in your families. Kuch bhi hota hai, you want to go sort that out. So just remember, if you leave this seat, we are not going to give other Indian women this seat, because you are the basis for how all of them behave. It's like, we are pretty much trying to fit into that norm, so we are not disservicing the next woman to come there. I wanted to ask you my next question. For example, I know a lot of my friends that are earning good money, but they don't have that much financial literacy. And then they go to a lot of these like men, and they'll be like, you have to invest in this niche startup. But as your first, and I tell them, as your first investment, you cannot invest in this niche startup. And a lot of them are like, but that's what all the like, when
Cool guys
content
are
Yeah,
doing.
they're
creation.
like, oh, why aren't you doing international stocks? I haven't even. I
Or like
just.
you need to day trade also, like hiring a financial advisor who's like, don't worry, I'll monitor the day trading for you and I'll day trade for you, which is something I'm like, you can't do that.
No, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
So day trading is completely out.
Yeah.
I don't day trade. It's a highly skilled a highly skilled professional can do day trading
Yes.
without losing money. And that's how a lot of people in our country lose money, because they trade in F&O, they trade in derivatives. You need to completely stay away from trading if you don't know anything about
Yeah.
it. If you've taken courses and you learnt it, go ahead and do it. But as women or even men who have a proper job or a profession, you cannot do day trading. You need to also understand that investing in, like, for example, recently there was a silver bull run, right? Silver went up. Every person was like, buy silver, buy silver. The minute retail investors got into silver, the rally stopped.
That's when I invested. And it fucking crashed
It
so
crashed,
hard.
yeah.
Another one of the things in my portfolio that is giving me shame every day, it's red. And I'm like, yuck, you're such a loser.
Is silver?
Yeah, because they're like, invest in silver. So, and I've been putting in gold, okay?
Yeah.
My friends like, put in silver also. You don't understand. Silver's like lambi race ka ghoda. You don't understand. I put it. And the
then
next day it crashed. So I'm just staring at it every day.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. You should not invest in trending things. Never invest in startups if you don't understand. It's a very, very complex game.
Yeah.
I don't invest in startups.
Can you say,
Also-
apart from Moss, please
Also,
never
no,
invest in
no.
any startup?
Your first investment, when like say, we also we're in the gig economy,
Yeah.
and you get like, okay, you're getting your payments, suddenly you get a big chunk, and there'll always be some man at a party telling one of my friends like, you don't know XYZ startup. All the cool people are investing in XYZ startup. And I have to like sit my friends down and be like, your first ever investment. Kal tumne FD open kiya. You cannot invest in this startup that's selling printed t-shirts. It's not a good return. But then there'll be a guy telling them, I made 1 crore of my 10,000 rupee investment. Now, how do I explain to them? It's like 50 crores they already had. उसमें से
उसमें से 10 crore डाल दिया. हाँ.
So that's a like, or even these like financial advisors are like, I am XYZ TV actors financial advisor.
Yeah. A lot of them
And
do
they
that.
invested in this boba tea company. Like, it's like, it's such a
But that's the thing. That's how men talk about money, and it impresses other men. Like my friend took me to a financial advisor. Okay, he's like a wealth manager. I'm like, first, I have not believed that I have wealth. So when someone says they're my wealth manager, I'm like, why?
You mean my chiller manager?
And then, I'm sitting in that room and they're trying to obviously like impress me by having a conversation parallelly कि oh ये हाँ इनका तो हर रोज का 100 crore का चलता रहता है, and I'm having the opposite reaction like मेरे माँ के कंगन and 100 crore का difference, what is this guy gonna do?
Not adding up.
Yeah, it's not gonna add up. So please don't take any, like, you don't need to go from A to Z. You can just go from A to B. That is enough of your investment. Can you, just for women, let's take everything into account. How do I allocate my salary that comes per month? You've said 20% can go into investment.
So I'll tell you what I do. It's like, about 20% goes into investments. 40% is your expenses, like your rent, your school. My son's school fees,
Yeah.
not your school fees, but your rent, your utilities, your electricity, your water, your whatever, right? Your expenses. So 40% goes into that. And the rest 40% you keep it for your fun stuff.
Okay.
But 20% is a bare minimum. If you can make that 20%, 30% at some point in time, 40%, that's where you'll really ace it. That's why I say start small, and every year you top it up by 10%. So this year, if you're investing 20,000 rupees per month, next year top it up by 10%. you know?
Okay.
And how do I not feel bad when I cheat on this budget?
You should feel bad.
You shouldn't cheat on your budget.
Really? Like one extra matcha.
You can from that
I
remainder
just had
40%.
a breakup. My period came early. I'm feeling really down in life. It's 3 a.m. Instead
Means
of
that
texting him, I buy
If you
a
start
bag.
crying like that, then spend.
Please,
yeah,
can I cheat on
please.
you?
Yeah, then do what you want. We are not
This is-
responsible for all
Okay,
that.
fine.
Reminded me of my ex.
Then you have other problems to deal with.
What are things that you should look at in your partner that show signs that this is someone who is a steady, trustworthy life investment?
I think
Well,
one.
firstly, I think you should become the rich guy that you want to marry.
Done. Next.
I think marrying someone that's gainfully employed is
A
like
big
a
one.
big one, but it seems very rare. Like, in the sense that people could be rich but not gainfully employed. And then that they sit in their house making up like, like an idle mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Naina, I'll tell you, if you work on yourself and your mindset, the more you change your mindset, the more you work on yourself, you will attract a partner like yourself. You will never attract these people whose mindset is very different from you.
Fair.
So the trick is to earn more money, make your own money, invest your own money well. You will attract that kind of a guy.
But I do have to say, financially independent, highly successful women are the most likely victims for financial scams.
And to end up
Because
alone.
we are so like vulnerable, so lonely, because not many people are meeting the standard and bringing what we offer. So some man who like just projects wealth or like asks you for money and it's like I'll return it, whatever, like the Tinder swindler and everyone, it's always very successful, very financially independent women that have not taken a penny from anyone, handing out these loans in like a search for love and then getting so cut out in such a way that that's a professional
Is
job.
that a personal?
No, not at all.
okay.
Not at all.
Thankfully.
I know someone, a family member, a very successful doctor in the US. She recently had a divorce and she found this one guy on Hinge or something. And he started telling her about how he's got really successful businesses in North Africa and he does all these things. And he has a payment that he needs to go make immediately, but for his money to be wired from North Africa, it'll take 24 hours. So he's like, can you just make the payment for me right now? And before that, for like 2 weeks, he love bombed her in the sense that spoke to her for 6 hours. They video called each other. He sent flowers to her and everything. And he sent her like him on these different like private jets and everything. She was like, obviously I'm gonna
There's
give him this $200,000. And everyone in the family was like, listen,
do it.
how can he have this multi-million-dollar company, but you are the only person who can wire this amount? And we were like, don't do it. And luckily, like, we did like a cursory search and it's a very common scam. So we sent her a picture and everything and we said, refuse, let's see what he does. And as soon as she refused, he started sending a barrage of threats and everything. So that's how...
That actually, wow, that's
Yeah.
a proper full-blown
yeah,
scam.
yeah. I'm not talking about like this is like a huge, like it bankrupts people.
I guess women do get vulnerable, right? Because
Yeah.
again, it comes back to that conditioning as to how you always trust men.
Yeah.
You think, okay, they have my best interests in mind. I mean,
Yeah. Why would they want to scam me?
it would come back to that. Men, on the other hand, are suspicious about other men for some reason.
They are suspicious about other women also. They'll be like, gold digger, knowing that they have no money.
Since we have such a diverse set of female audience, can you give us one tip for each demographic that's listening to us? One crucial tip for 18 to 20-year-olds who are watching our podcast.
First, what you need to do is you need to put together an emergency fund. Don't start investing in the markets just yet. Play around a little bit with just parking your money in, say, an FD, keeping an emergency, because you never know when you need the money for any reason, right? So don't get into the market just yet, because between 18 to 24, what you're going to do is you're going to be trying your hand at your first job, your first salary. So don't rush into anything in that age.
Okay. And one bad habit they need to curtail.
Overspending because of mimetic desire. So following, trends and spending because you see it online or because of social media, I think that's something their parents will also tell them. So I don't need to tell them particularly.
Why not someone hotter?
But overspending, I think, is a big problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
25 to 35.
If you're between the age of 25 and 35, you need to start investing because that you have a lot of time on your hands, right? If you start investing properly at 25, by the time you're 40, you will be financially independent. And that's the time when you need to be independent to take a lot of life decisions. So 25 to 35, disciplined investing, consistent investing, staying away from a lot of trending investments. So staying away from futures and options, trading, penny stocks, trending assets like silver, for example. So, just keep it consistent, keep it safe, and make sure that you invest every month.
Okay, lovely. 35 to 45, hopefully they have kids. Hopefully they're trying to seek an early retirement. What's the plan?
So in the 35 to 45 age group, I've realized that your expenses really multiply, right? You have a lot of things to look after. That's a time when things are happening simultaneously. Not only are your children growing up, if you choose to have kids, your parents are aging. So your expenses really go up. You have school fees on one hand, you have parents' surgery on the other hand. You yourself have to invest in your health, or else you're just investing in you're just spending for medicines or healthcare. So that's a time when you need to be very, very focused with your investments, very focused with, and that's also a time when you want to take career breaks, you want to switch your careers, you want to move to entrepreneurship. So between 25 to 35 is when you really need to be focused in your investing, and you need to continue that between 35 and 45. And that's also a time when you may want to buy a house. So, lot of expenses come together. So the planning has to be done well in advance.
And 50s, I'm guessing, is similar but more intense. So retirement.
So for retirement, when you have proper investments, you can do a systematic withdrawal plan, an SWP. The SWP is a systematic withdrawal plan. So what you're doing is, if you have, say, 100 rupees in a mutual fund, you withdraw 10 rupees every month, and you kind of use that for your spending. So that you continue investing that money, but not in the stock markets. You invest it in something safer, like a government bond, which gives you a 10% return, which gives you like a 6-7% return every month. So that's a proper systematic, because see, like an SIP is a systematic investment plan. And then there comes a stage in your life where you need that money to spend. So that's when you do an SWP.
Okay. Lovely.
Thank
Is
you.
there anything you would like to plug?
No, nothing at all.
Okay, just a lovely person then.
But
Sonia
all her
Shenoy.
links will be linked down in the bio. Thank you so much, Sonia Shenoy, for coming on
Thank you.
Moss.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.